This is Lecture 1 for English 102. This lecture is on point of view and the narrator. Point of view is who tells the story and how it is told. The narrator is the teller of the story. The narrator affects how we understand the character's actions by filtering what is told through his or her own perspective. The narrator plays such an important role in the development. He or she helps shape our perspective as an audience, especially in regards to how the main character develops. And so I told you also, just a note here, be careful that you don't confuse the narrator with the author. The author is not always the teller of their own story, so be careful there. There's always going to be, you're always going to want to try to identify who is telling the story. And sometimes that will be the author, and then sometimes it will be a carefully chosen narrator. There are two broad categories of narrators. You have a third-person narrator and a first-person narrator. So I'm going to break each one down for you so you understand it a little bit better. The third-person narrator is a non-participant. It's not a character in the story. You're going to be able to identify those through the use of he, she, it, they, instead of I and you. It's a non-participant, not a character in the story. Instead, he or she or it is explaining the story through his viewpoint of every other character in the story. So then you have, within third person, you have some specific types. The first one is the omniscient third person. The omniscient is all-knowing. He or she can move from place to place and pass back and forth through time, slipping into and out of the characters as no human being could possibly in real life. He or she can report what the characters' thoughts and feelings as well as what they say and do. So omniscient, all-knowing, any character. They can do thoughts and feelings inside their minds as well as what they say physically, verbally, out loud, and do. Then you have a limited omniscient, much more confined, often restricted to the single perspective of either a major or a minor character. The way people, places, and events appear to that character is the way they appear to the reader. So omniscient, any character, all-knowing, lots of different characters. Limited omniscient, same concept, just much more focused on a single perspective, okay, of a major or minor character. Still not a character in the story, looking through the lens of an outside person. So the reader has access to the thoughts and the feelings of the character as revealed by the narrator. And we hear what they say and we hear what they do, but neither the reader nor the character itself has access to any other of the characters in the story, except what they physically say. A stream of consciousness is a technique in narration that takes the reader inside a character's mind to reveal perceptions, thoughts, and feelings on a conscious or unconscious level. Stream of consciousness suggests that the flow of thought as well as its content. Hence, sometimes complete sentences may give way to fragments. An example of this is from James Joyce's Ulysses, inside the mind of a character who's describing a funeral. And you can see here that this series of fragments kind of inside the character's thoughts. He's not speaking them out loud. Sometimes the thoughts and feelings in text will be of an inside a character's mind will be italicized to make it set it off from the other text in the story. Coffin now got here before us, dead as he is. Horse looking round at it with his plumes scowways, dull eye, collar tight on his neck, pressing on a blood vessel or something. Do they know what they cart out of here every day? Must be 20 or 30 funerals every day. Stream of consciousness, thoughts, feelings, perceptions of on an unconscious level coming from a character's mind. Still under third person, objective point of view is when you have a narrator still outside the action, not a character in the story, cannot see into the mind of any character. He can only report on what the character does and what he says without telling us directly what the character feels or thinks. This is detached and impersonal. We, the readers, then observe the characters in much the same way that we would perceive events in a film or play. When we watch a movie, we can only see what's happening, the action on the screen, and hear what's actually spoken. And no analysis in a movie is given to us by the narrator. We, as the readers of any text, film, text, whatever, we have to interpret what is happening through prior knowledge or schema. We pick up on context clues or verbal cues, what's happening, body language. We observe the characters in the way that we would in a film or play. We're not given any analysis or any interpretation provided by the narrator. Okay, this point of view objective relies on dialogue, actions, and details to reveal the character. Then you have first person narration. First person is a participant in the story. It's going to be that I point of view, one character's consciousness, and the reader is very restricted to the perceptions, thoughts, and feelings of that single character. Okay, so I point of view, first person narration, character in the story, a participant, an active participant, and we're only allowed to see inside the thoughts and feelings and perceptions of that character. Now, as a first-person narrator, we can hear dialogue coming from other characters and we can see the action, but we can only present the I point of view in a first-person narration. One of the primary reasons for identifying point of view in a story is to determine where the author stands in relation to the story. So, behind the narrative voice of any story is this author, kind of like a puppet master. He's manipulating events, actions, thoughts, speech, providing and withholding information, all purposefully. It's a mistake, again, to assume that the narrative voice of the story is always the author. The narrator, whether first person, third person, objective, limited, whatever, omniscient, it's a creation of the writer. It's not a real person. It's created by the author for a purpose. So a narrator's perceptions may be accepted, rejected, or modified by an author depending on how the narrator's voice is articulated. Sometimes you have narrators that we cannot treat as reliable. Unreliable narrators reveal an interpretation of events that's different from the author's own interpretation of these events. Narrators can be unreliable for a number of reasons. They might lack self-knowledge or self-awareness. If you've ever seen the movie with Bruce Willis, The Sixth Sense, the big plot twist at the end, that character is very not self-aware of the fact that he is actually dead the entire time. So they lack self-knowledge or self-awareness. They might be inexperienced. They could even be crazy. There are a lot of crazy narrators who are actually unreliable. We can't trust things from their viewpoint because of these factors that make them unreliable. Naive narrator, on the other hand, is usually a youth, usually innocent. They lack the sophistication to interpret things accurately. They haven't lived enough or experienced enough life in order to interpret events accurately. We get it from their point of view, but it's unreliable in the sense that they're obviously going to view the event as much different than what an experienced reader such as yourself can actually understand it as. So they're unreliable because they have to go beyond their understanding to comprehend. The reader has to go beyond the understanding of events to comprehend the situation. So writers choose a point of view to achieve particular effects, because point of view determines what we know about the characters and events in a story. Always be aware of who is telling the story and whether the narrator sees things clearly and reliably.